Welcome to Expert Opinion, the branding business forum where leaders share their views, insights, and experiences from the world of B2B branding. And now, here's your host.
Welcome to Expert Opinion. Today's guest is Mark Rutherford, Senior Vice President of Human Resources for First American Financial. Mark, welcome to Expert Opinion.
Thanks, Ryan. We're happy to be here.
Well, first off, congrats on being listed in the top 100 companies to work for by Fortune magazine. Very, very impressive company. Organizations like Google, Boston Consulting Group, American Express. So fantastic results to a lot of work. Just a couple of thoughts before we begin. Pretty compelling stats for those that actually are able to get on the list. I know last year's publication touted the fact that the public companies that made the list outperformed the S&P nearly 2-to-1. So clearly some great financial benefits of being on the list. And then on another note, the conference board just released their annual CEO survey, and the number one priority for CEOs in 2016 is attracting and retaining talent. So I'm sure these thoughts are near and dear to your heart, but let's shift and talk more about First American. And just as a little background, First American's a public company, over 125 years old. And Mark, how many employees are part of the organization, and how many locations do you have?
I actually know. You'd hope I'd know that. 18,000 employees worldwide. 11,000 employees domestically, and I know just here in the U.S. we've probably got 700 plus brick and mortar offices that are out helping folks do what we like to say, be a part of the American dream and either buy or refinance their home.
Let's begin with, how do you pursue going about getting on this list?
Well, one of the things, and this may sound almost a little silly, it's kind of like if you decide you want to lose weight, I think the first thing you've got to do is decide you want to do it. And in our case, we decided we wanted to do it, or I'll say sort of tongue-in-cheek, our CEO threw it out to us as a challenge. But we started to get ready for it kind of a couple years before that. We were interested in learning what our employees thought about working here. We started a process where we had or implemented employee engagement surveys. Then we sort of took a step forward and started to compete in regional best places to work, all which had a survey component. But along that way, we kind of learned a little bit. We won a few regional best places to work competitions. We lost a couple. In each case, we got a little bit smarter, and then we got to a point where we really just kind of wanted to raise the bar, and we thought trying to compete for something on a national level was the way to do it.
Fantastic. Well, I know it takes a lot of work to fill out the submission, and maybe you can talk a little bit about that journey and the process that you went about trying to go for this award.
Well, there's really two parts, and I'm sure some of your listeners have either participated, gotten lucky enough to pull this off, or maybe just are interested in how this happened. But there's really two parts of it. 2/3 of the competition each year is based on a sample of your employee population. So it's an employee survey, and you do that employee survey, and then another part of it, or 1/3 of it, is actually called the cultural audit. And that part of it's really your company's opportunity to tell your story. And it is a lot of work. The company that runs the process for Fortune magazine wants lots and lots of data. We submitted, I think, 300 pages of just data about everything from the demographics of our workforce to actually our financial performance. Then we submitted the culture audit. We've competed 2 years. This was our second year, and we got on the list the second year that we tried. 135-page cultural audit, which gives you a chance to sort of tell your company story, to talk about your benefits, your values, the involvement you have in your community, recognition programs, a little bit about your history, and to put all those things in context. So it's a big effort. We've had a group of people working either full or part-time on this for a couple of years because we just thought it was that important.
Fantastic. So what's the most difficult part of the submission process?
I think probably the most difficult part of the process is trying to figure out really how to tell your story. Mm-hmm. I think it's easy to tell kind of what your company is in numbers, and certainly in how your company performed against expectations you set to the street, and certainly we do that on earnings releases, every quarter, like every public company does. But figuring out what your story is, talking to enough employees, having been committed to a process where you've listened to your employees, made changes based on what your employees have told you they want or desire in a workplace, and then making corrections and communicating those corrections to your employees.
Very, very important to listen and actually realize change. So what have you learned about the organization by going through this, or what has come out of this process?
We figured out what was important. We figured out what our employee population looked like. And one of the things that's really probably the most interesting is I think we figured out it was important to stay true to who you were. We're in the housing market, and the housing market's very cyclical, and that cyclicality has an impact on our workforce sometimes. We didn't try to hide that. We're almost 130-year-old a company, fairly conservative, and we're in a space where we have people's and protect people's information. I think we want to be we want to be and appear and be a conservative company, much like a bank. And I think we learned just to tell our story and to be true to who we were, and to not get caught up in what I'll call perk wars. You're not going to come into a First American office anywhere around the U.S. or to our home office here in Southern California and find foosball stables. You're not going to trip over a dog walking into the office. That's cool for some folks, not cool for us. So I think the biggest thing we learned was to be true to who we were, and in front of being true to who we were, just to have the structure or the infrastructure in place to be sure you've got a good mechanism to listen to what your employees are telling you, and to be able to communicate back to them the changes that you've made or the changes you haven't made and why, and have that feedback process back and forth.
Very well said, Mark. I think you hit the nail on the head. You have to really live your own culture. There's no way you can compete with a Google out there and try to emulate them. They are who they are, and you have to be able to be true to your own brand as well as your own internal culture. And that culture starts at the top, like you mentioned. Your leadership team was behind this overall process, and they really set the tone for the culture of an organization. So can you share a little bit more about your CEO's perspective on the view of employees and how the whole ecosystem works?
Well, two things. I mentioned before how decentralized we were, and the fact that we had 700 offices around the U.S., that our business was fairly cyclical. And First American tends to be a little bit more bottom up than top down. So I think one of the things that made it challenging to tell our story and to make sure that we had the communications path with all of our employees was we are just so decentralized. We've got offices in the U.S. that have 2 people, 10 people, 50 people, and making sure you're connecting with those offices is an important part of what we try and do each day. That said, there are times when you need to roll out something on a national level, or you want to really run a thread through every single one of your employees and to be able to compete for something. And competing for the Fortune 100 was certainly something that was us kind of raising the bar. We're very proud of our culture. We think our culture's different than those folks that compete with us, and we really wanted to be able to leverage that culture and to share it with other folks. Dennis Gilmore, who is our CEO, actually announced the Fortune that we were going to compete for the Fortune 100 in an all-hands meeting that we typically have each quarter. He did that, I'm going to say, right at the beginning of 2014. We'd talked about it. I think one of my colleagues and I sort of turned and looked at each other and said, I guess we're going to do this. Mm-hmm. And Dennis started to communicate it with his leadership team, and knew we had kind of learned our way there by the progress we'd made on the employee engagement survey, that we'd gathered data from the employee engagement survey and done something about it, by the good fortune we had in competing for the best places to work on a regional level, and ended up in celebrations where folks from First American and our customers were all in the same room, and it was time to take it up, and we were excited to compete, and just to be quite honest, just tickled to death to be a part of the list this year.
Well, it sounds like the process of competing itself brought people closer together, and I know that part of the process and part of the effort was to understand, document, and then celebrate your corporate culture. And there are significant benefits when you do that. In fact, I just ran across a stat from Harvard Business Review that's saying that an effective culture can account for 20 to 30% of the differential in corporate performance when compared with culturally unremarkable competitors. So I don't think the average person realizes the impact that culture can have on an organization and the financial performance going forward. With that in mind, is there anything that you learned throughout the process that you will change and or, I guess, continue to celebrate the culture and or find ways to increase communication of the internal organization and its culture?
Well, one of the things is we thought we had a pretty good thing going here, and this will sound maybe a little bit silly to folks listening to this, but First American really is a great place to work, and I think part of the reason that we've started to have a more thoughtful process about implementing our employee engagement survey on a national level, the reason we started to compete in regional best places to work, and ultimately the reason we decided to compete for the Fortune 100 was we really believed this was a great place to work. Kind of wanted to check and see if we were right or not. And I think the one thing that the competing both in the regional best places to work and competing on Fortune allows you to do is to really benchmark yourself against other great companies out there, and to sort of celebrate the culture you've got and the investment you've made in the culture. And you know this as well as I do, Ryan. This is not easy stuff, and I think the larger a company is, the more a global reach it has, the more sort of business challenges it has. And I mentioned us being in a very distributed and very cyclical business. I think it's tough to not sort of sell out your culture and to keep it feeling like it's a place that folks want to work. And we can maybe talk about this a little bit, but the whole process or reality of competing for talent, it's a real thing. And we want people to want to work here, and it's important enough to us to make the investment that we've made in making sure that we're listening to our employees and making sure that we're competing with and comparing ourselves to other great companies out in the workplace.
Well, that goes back to that CEO survey. The number one priority is attracting and retaining the top talent. We've been working in this area for many, many years, and we do a lot of employee surveys, and what we find is that the number one thing people are looking for is clarity on where's this organization going, what's the vision, and how am I going to fit in. The second most requested component is more communication, and you can never offer too much communication. So are there any initiatives that on these notes that have kind of come out of the process that you are either contemplating or initiating in regards to internal branding or employee communications?
Well, one, and maybe not the right place to mention it, but I think anytime you go down this path, it's important to put together a great team of people to help you get there. Certainly we did that with our HR organization inside First American. We've got a good internal communications department that assisted us, and then the good folks at the branding business certainly came in and it gave us lots of great advice and really joined the team to allow us to both have a good internal and external perspective on what we needed to do to be able to communicate and to set the bar for our employees and to let them know where we're pointed and to continue to let them know where we were at in that process to get there. But two things I'll mention. One is I think that in addition to your comments around what people look for in a company, I think people today, and maybe this is a little bit more in the millennial demographic, really want to work at a company that has a purpose beyond just making money. Making money is important, but we put a lot of effort, and when we heard that from our employees, into a program we called Caring for Our Community, and we make sure that that we not only do things that are good for the communities in which we do business, but that we've focused where we want to spend our dollars and volunteer our employees a time, and that we're not shy about letting the rest of our the rest of our workforce know what we're doing, where we're doing it, and the impact that we're having. The other thing that I think is important and may resonate with some of the folks that are listening are this whole idea of developing an employee brand. We really wanted to look at how, in our case, HR in particular, touched an employee from recruitment to retirement. And when we looked across that spectrum and in the life cycle of an employee, we were touching folks 100 or better times, and everything that we did looked a little bit different. And we wanted people to know that when they saw a particular look and feel or a brand of something that was coming from HR that impacted their life here as an employee, that it all looked the same. So we've started an initiative to be able to do that. We've talked about how important our First American employees are, and we've branded that internal initiative with some help from you guys as People First.
Well, perfect. Tell me more about People First.
I think a lot of it tied to making sure that we're clear about our employees knowing where we're pointed, and about knowing what it is that we're and they're doing to support their brand.
Well, perfect. It works hand in hand with First American, and I'll repeat something you said as well in terms of communication, and that is this idea of consistency and clarity, because that really does have a huge impact. People want to be communicated with, but they also want to be communicated to them very, very clearly, and that's what stands out and breaks apart from all the clutter out there. Any final advice that you might want to be able to give companies who are considering going after this listing, Fortune's 100 Best Places to Work?
Well, one of the things I'll say is, and I'll say this a little bit tongue-in-cheek, I believe going through the whole process is really, really valuable, and it's a lot more than just about getting on the list. Although getting on the list is certainly something we thought about and dreamed about, and I'd much rather be on the list than not on the list. But it's really about making sure you understand who you are, what you want your workplace to be, and then I think, and I mentioned it earlier, it's about not being somebody that you're not. It's not about perk wars. It's not about trying to be cool if you're not really that cool. It's really about staying true to your culture, investing in the resources to make it happen. It's not easy to get on the list, and I mentioned that we had a number of people working for a couple of years on this, although I think the benefits of talking to your employees, reaching out to local offices, understanding what's important, getting people to offer testimonials to back up what it is you're trying to accomplish at the company, and really staying focused on the fact that if you're in business, who your culture is, what brand you have, what people think about you when they hear First American, how you're treated from the moment you come into the company to the moment you decide to leave, all that's very, very important. And it's something that when we started this quest, we talked about it every day, we dreamed about it, and we're tickled to death to be on the list, but it doesn't happen, quite honestly, without having a great culture to begin with and putting people first.
Well, it sounds like the entire organization has benefited greatly from this process. You've been able to uncover people's perceptions of the organization, better understanding of how people perceive the culture. You're able to then celebrate the culture, increase the communications, and really create even probably additional pride within the organization as well. So as you just said, getting on the list is fantastic, but the process and the results far outweigh the benefit of just making the list and getting another plaque on the wall. Are there any other things that you're contemplating in HR or any other areas of process or improvement that you're evaluating for the future?
No, I think we're at the very beginning of starting to let the company know that we're on the list. I think we're going to enjoy 2016 celebrating not only being on the list, but celebrating why we got there. We think it's going to be a real competitive advantage for us in the marketplace to be able to share that both inside and outside the company. To your point, I think our workforce will be very proud that we're on that list. It'll give our folks in our talent acquisition something to talk about. It'll give our business leaders something to talk about, and it will reinforce everything that all of us believe that this is a great place to work. If we've got great people and those great people do a great job of taking care of our customers, that ultimately the benefits that we'll see are great financial performance.
Going back to your comments around the support that your CEO has provided, I've heard Dennis speak, and I've heard him say that to this point that first, if we begin by focusing on the employees, and if we create happy employees who love their job and fulfill the company's mission, they'll actually create happy customers, and the happy customers create happy shareholders, and everything works out in a nice, cohesive environment if that occurs. So I love hearing the CEO speak to and place the employees at the priority. So well done from the top down. Culture begins there, and as you're celebrating the culture, the great culture that First American has, congratulations again to making the list. You just won the Super Bowl, so we're going to take a little time off. We're almost out of time. Is there anything else that I haven't asked that you'd like our listeners to know?
I can't think of it, Ryan, other than it's one of those things where it doesn't happen without just a laser beam focus, with people dreaming about wanting to achieve it, actually having something that's true that you want to tell folks about, and then having a great team to get you there. And our entire company's been behind our quest, if that's a good word to use, to get on the list. We've benefited from it. We've got just a strong group of people inside of our HR organization that have put this all together. A marketing communications team that was a part of it, and it was just terrific to have the branding business on our team from the very beginning that we did it, to help us and be a part of our journey along the way. So we're happy to be on the list, and we're ready to go at it again next year.
Mark, thank you for your great insights, and thank you for being a guest on Expert Opinion. If our listeners have any questions of you, how would they best reach you? Would you mind sharing your email address?
Yeah, they can reach me at First American at marutherford@firstam.com.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. That concludes our show today. This is Ryan Rieches, and you've been listening to another edition of Expert Opinion, a branding business forum where thought leaders share their point of view. If you'd like to listen to past shows or read our blog series, visit BrandingBusiness.com.